Welcome in, listeners. Welcome back to the Flipping the Bird podcast. I'm your host, Luke Lawhorn, the current sports editor at UTSA student newspaper, The Paisano. I'm joined by Rylan Renteria today. What's going on, my man?
Not much, some middle of the week ball talking. I'm ready to get into it.
Yeah, it's just us two today. We usually got a bigger crowd, but I don't know. I mean, we're recording at a different time today, so maybe that can have something to do with it. But yeah, we're just gonna talk some hoops today, talk some football. It's the first day of the NBA regular season. As we're speaking now, I just came from the Spurs practice, so I got a lot to talk to you about that. We're going to preview UTSA and East Carolina. They play this Saturday. Talk about some NFL games that are going to happen this weekend, and yeah, we're just going to talk. So, Rylan, let's talk about the Spurs, man.
Mm-hmm.
Play their first game tonight against the Dallas Mavericks. By the time people listen to this podcast, we'll already know who won, and the Spurs play again at home Friday against Houston. So I just kind of want to take a step back real quick and look at this season as a whole.
Mm.
Going into, Wemby's first year, we re-signed Zach Collins for an extension. We restructured all these pieces like Sohan, Malachi Branham, Blake Wesley. It looks like this is our core for years to come.
Mm-hmm.
And the long journey starts today.
Yep.
So how do you envision the early part of the season going? Because there's going to you'd envision some hiccups with this young core.
Right.
These first month or so, how do you view this going?
I actually have it going pretty well for the Spurs, and only because I was so encouraged by what I saw from Vassell and Wemby. I mean, it was really dependent on how Wemby was going to adjust to being in the NBA. He played against grown men, in France, but like the NBA, this is the best of the best, right? But he showed me something in the preseason games. I know it's preseason. I know you shouldn't put a lot of stock into it, but he did move me a little bit. Blocking Clay and then going back for the dunk, and then just out dominating the Warriors pretty much in that final preseason game. Vassell looked really good. Sohan was struggling a little bit, but I think he's going to get that right. And honestly, I have them winning tonight, and I have them winning Friday, and I think I have them having a good first month.
So a quick 2-0 start to the year.
Yeah.
You have okay. I don't know if you knew this tonight. By the way, it's a late freaking game, 8:30. But ESPN's going to be there because I mean I see it firsthand being at the practice game. They're getting a lot of attention, and these dudes who are on the Spurs are literally our age.
That's crazy.
19, 20, 21, 22 years old. Do you think that ESPN being there, all the lights, especially after players like Keldon Johnson, Devin Vassell have been there a couple years. They're not used to this attention yet. They're used to being the laughing stock name. Not actually, but just at the bottom. They get the last attention of all 30 teams. Do you think that could be a distraction or an issue, or do you not see that playing a factor?
It could. I don't see it playing a factor for Wemby. I don't think that's going to phase him at all. I think he at this point he's used to that. But for the other parts of this core, I think it will have a little bit of effect. But I think as the game goes on, I think they'll start to settle in. They probably will have a little bit of a rough start, but I think they will settle in as the game goes on.
That seems to be a common thing. Every today, someone was asking Devin Vassell and Trey Jones, are you any more nervous for today's game than usual? All the lights, ESPN's going to be there. Not exactly sure who's calling the green. People like, who knows, Richard Jefferson or whoever the ESPN crew is, they're going to be there. So who knows without a strike. So you have San Antonio beating the Mavericks tonight.
Yeah, I do.
I don't know if I could do that. I wouldn't be surprised just because it's so early in the season. Hoopers, I mean, they might go out and beat Luka and Kyrie, but I feel like the veterans late in the game, they should take over. I mean, you would at least think. I mean, the Spurs vets are Doug McDermott, who probably won't be in the game late, if I'm being honest. If they're running that starting lineup of Jeremy Sohan and Devin Vassell, Keldon Johnson, Victor, and then who am I missing? Zach Collins. You would think, wouldn't you think that Luka and Kyrie would have the advantage there?
Maybe. I don't know. I'm not a big fan of Kyrie. Like I was like in like 2016 or whatever, but now it just kind of seems like his main focus is in basketball. And Luka already is, they make fun of him all the time. He's kind of like not super in shape.
Yeah.
So I just feel the Mavericks give me vibes like of a team that won't come out super focused, super ready. And I feel like you have an eager young core in San Antonio that's ready to go out in prime time and put a good game against a good team, and I think they'll do that.
So likely by the next time we talk, according to you, you have us beating the Mavericks in Houston. So by the next time we talk, you wouldn't be surprised if we're so early in the season. I had the best start in Texas of the other NBA teams.
Yeah, I mean the Rockets. I mean, come on, like
that's your team.
Hey, you know what? You know what? I had hope in the Rockets when they drafted Jalen Green, Jabari Smith, but we've seen enough of them to know that they're not where we are right now, at least.
Okay. And before we move on, I hate to put you on the spot, but do you happen to have a preseason kind of title favorite or a team you think is going to win the finals, at least in the West or East or anything? Or have you put any thought into that at all?
Yeah. My team to win it all this year is the Bucks.
The Bucks.
Yep. I feel like Dame. You already have like the Bucks are already contender, right? And then you add Dame. I just think, and they have depth too. I just think that's going to be the team that takes it.
I definitely wouldn't be surprised if it's between them and the Celtics in the East. In the West, though, I think there's a lot of teams all fighting. I mean, as much as we love young teams like the Spurs or my Thunder, they're still young in a West that's pretty deep. You have the Nuggets who are coming back, who by the way beat the Lakers again last night. Yep. That's pretty funny. Both the Warriors and Lakers, you could argue the Clippers and Suns seem to be on their quote unquote, one or two more seasons left before they have to, restart their rosters basically. So it seems like there's about 5-6 teams in the West in win now mode. So who do you have coming out of the West, 6 months early making a prediction? Do you have any? Because right now, I wouldn't be surprised if the Nuggets ran it back. Honestly, for me, it'll be between the Nuggets and the Suns.
Yeah.
I think this is Kevin Durant's. I think he's a top 15 player all time. I think he has 1 or 2 more seasons at the back end of his prime where he can still average 30 games, but he's only got a year or two left to do that.
Yeah.
And so this year, I think with Devin Booker ending the year last year the way he did, them and the Nuggets will be my 2 favorites coming out of the West.
Yeah, same. But I also want to give a shout out to the Grizzlies because I like Ja Morant. Like if he can play and not have his antics and doing all that stuff off the field, then they're a dangerous team. Especially they got Marcus Smart in the offseason, right?
That's
from the trade for the Celtics. They had more defense. They already have Jaren Jackson Jr., right? Defense player of the year, right? It was last year.
A couple years ago.
Still a good defensive player, whether or not he's a reigning defense player of the year. So they have a good core, and I think they can make some noise if Ja Morant stays on the court.
Does it scare you at all that Steven Adams is gone for the year?
Yeah, it does.
I mean,
that's true. That did just happen.
It did just happen. It could shake because I feel like the teams in the West right now. You got AD with the Lakers. You have Draymond with the Warriors. You got Jokic with the Nuggets. All these big guys. Steven Adams was kind of your enforcer.
Dang, that's a good point.
So I mean, obviously Triple J, good defender, but it was a lot better and smoother when both of them were on the court, kind of taking command of the paint. You had Ja doing all his things on the other side of the court on offense. But who knows, man? It's going to be a long season. Can't wait for it. Spurs tip off tonight. Yes. Hopefully they start 2-0 to the season. So next week we talk about them being the best team in Texas. Let's go to our other team, our team who plays on Saturdays, UTSA football.
Yes.
On a 3-game winning streak right now since starting conference play, beating Temple, beating UAB, beating Florida Atlantic, and honestly, I think they've handled all 3 of those games.
Oh, yeah.
They've made a pretty smooth process from Conference USA to American Athletic Conference just so far through 3 weeks handling their competition. So let's kind of preview their game Saturday. They play East Carolina at 2:30 in the Dome. They're going to attempt to extend their winning streak to 4 games. How do you view this game on Saturday playing out, and who do you have winning?
Oh, we're going to destroy them. It won't be close. This is a bad East Carolina team. It is. I mean, they have a good defense, but their offense is not good, right? I think Traylor said that they were like top 30 in the nation. That's okay. That's good. But
he said who's top 30?
Traylor said that East Carolina was top 30, top 25 defense in the league.
Okay.
So they got a good defense. I imagine we won't come out the gates, but as we'll go pretty good against them. I think. I'd say by at least 3 scores.
Okay, I tend to agree with you on that. Because you and me have always, and it's a shame that it's just you and me here, and not joined by Aramis and Connor, Nick, the usual suspects, because you and me last week were pretty confident in handling business. And you and me have kind of shared that we're going to handle business. I said we're going to handle business against, all these teams. You tend to agree. And we could see that going until at least the Tulane game. Because right now, this conference, I've been saying it for a few days now, if we take care of these next 4 weeks, we're going to be in the AAC championship. Either beating Tulane twice or splitting 1-1, whether it's win the last game and lose the conference championship or vice versa. I have the same thing. I have us beating East Carolina by multiple scores this Saturday. I think you've really, in these last few weeks, seen the greatness of Jeff Traylor. Because these last couple of years, including myself, I just look at our team and just our environment. And maybe it's just because they're in my city and I've seen so much, it's hard for me to, kind of put it in my head how good they are. But they handle business when they have to. Like, obviously, yeah, we're going to lose to Texas last year. We're going to lose to Tennessee. And, of course, the Houston games are upsetting. But we win games we should win. And that's the mark of a good team. And I have us taking care of business, East Carolina, and then going on to play familiar opponents, North Texas and Rice. If we handle those, play South Florida at the end. Who knows? They played Alabama tough. That could be a trap game, look ahead game to Tulane. You don't see that happening?
Nah, man.
So we handle business.
We're gonna handle business. We're focused. Okay, we know the team is focused on game by game, but as fans and as spectators, we know that the next real contest will be against Tulane at the end of this season.
Have you looked into Tulane at all this year, or just opponents? They're ranked. They're 22.
Yeah, they are ranked.
Does that match up? 5 weeks ahead. Have you thought about that at all? Does that scare you, or you also like players 1 week at a time?
No, I've looked ahead to it for sure. I haven't really done a deep dive into Tulane's roster. I know they have a good quarterback, Michael Pratt. He obviously lit up USC last year in the Cotton Bowl, I believe. Who doesn't light up USC's defense? But 23 it's impressive, but that's about the best G5 team. I think, or a top G5 team. So I think it's a pretty even matchup, whether we're ranked or not. So if they were 10 or something, yeah, I'd be like, okay, well, but they're only 23. We were 23 at the end of last year, and we lost to Troy in the bowl game. So they're not unbeatable just because they're ranked. So I think it'll actually be a really close game, and I think we'll actually pull it out.
And Tulane's only loss is to Ole Miss. Pretty a top half SEC team. They lost 37-20. But I mean, there are other games. They've played some similar comp to UTSA, and it's always hard to do this and perhaps unfair, but they beat North Texas 35-28. I mean, that's about what UTSA does in North Texas. They beat Memphis 31-21. We beat Memphis a couple years ago. UAB 35-23. We beat UAB by a wider margin. So still 5 weeks ahead, plenty of time. Anything can happen. Don't want to get too unfocused here, but Tulane's not too far from UTSA.
No,
and it would be so crazy if UTSA could turn it around from being 1-3 to then 10-3 an AAC champion, and they would be assuming if Michigan and Georgia were to win their conference, and that's very questionable.
Yep,
UTSA would be the only team in the country to win 3 straight conference titles.
That's crazy.
And typically the AAC champion goes to play the Big 12 or SEC runner-up and get slaughtered. But go to the Sugar Bowl, go to the Cotton Bowl, and play, play one of these other Power 5 champions that was left out of the playoffs, see what they got. So, yeah, it'll be very exciting to see what happens this Saturday as we play East Carolina. You and me predict we'll win by multiple scores, so a comfortable win.
Yep.
Can't wait to be back next week to talk about it. Let's stay in college football and talk about a team. We just talked about USC. I don't know your stance. You're one of those Caleb Williams, he's going to be a top 10 quarterback immediately in the NFL. Are you one of those?
I don't know about that because
but you think he's going to work, right?
I think he'll be fine.
Okay.
I don't think he's generational like a lot of people are saying. I think I saw something that he said that he wanted 10% equity in the whatever team drafts him.
Really?
Yeah.
He said that?
He said
Wow.
he won't go to a team unless he gets stake in the franchise that drafts him number 1 overall.
That's pretty bold.
That's pretty crazy. And for me, I'm thinking yeah, he's good, but generational.
I know, because now, I don't know if he'll be better than CJ Stroud.
Right.
CJ Stroud's been popping off. But USC, they lose again. They lose a nail biter to Utah. They just can't seem to beat the Moots, man.
Yeah.
0-3 with under Caleb Williams and Lincoln Riley. They fall again. There was a lot of drama in last week. Your Florida State was struggling until Duke's quarterback leaves the game. He was lighting them up, man.
True.
Ohio State seemed to handle business against Penn State. Looking back from this past weekend at Saturday's games, did any game stick out to you, whether it was Utah's win over USC, Ohio State's win, your Florida State team escaping? Anything stick out to you?
Well, I'll tell you one thing that stuck out to me. Texas versus Houston. That shocked me. One, because we saw Houston offensively struggle against us, and then they make it close against Texas, who I thought was one of the best teams in the nation. I thought they were the best team in the nation until they lost to Oklahoma. Even after the loss to Oklahoma, I still thought they were top four.
Right.
And then they go out there and you struggle to frankly a bad Houston team. So that game really stuck out to me, as well as like you said, the Florida State one. They beat a good Duke team. They deserve to be in the top four. They're still my natty pick.
And it's not a bad pick. I mean, when I say I'm, confident, whatever, I'm speaking on behalf of my Ohio State squad who did handle their business. I'll touch on them in a second. Yeah, Texas, by the way, narrowly escaping Houston. And by the way, that was a bad spot by the refs. Houston could have easily gone and tied that game up. Yep. But I love how now that we're at the latter half of the season, it seems to always work itself out. This season, there still is a lot of parity. Everyone's like, oh man, there's so many great teams. But now as weeks go by, USC's lost 2 in a row. Texas and Florida State are in close games. Now all of a sudden the Big Ten race is looking to be Ohio State versus Michigan, putting Penn State back in the back seat.
Yep.
Everything's working itself out. But don't look now, man. Alabama. I said this when it happened. I know nobody wants to say it because we're tired of Bama. Trust me, man. I am too. But they beat Tennessee 34-20, and quietly they're ninth.
Yep.
They have that early loss to Texas, but if everyone thinks they're their top 4 team, then that makes Alabama's one loss, which was close, by the way. Look, not too bad. They've been handling business ever since. Obviously, struggled slow against South Florida, but they beat Ole Miss. They beat Mississippi State. They beat A&M. They beat Arkansas. They beat Tennessee, and now they have their bye. But then they play LSU coming out of their bye next week. If they win that game, they're going to go from 9, which, by the way, the playoff poll comes out next week. They're going to go from 9 to at least like 6. And in that time frame, there's going to be other teams that lose that are up there. I know that Washington and Oregon, and USC, Utah, they all play each other. I don't know the order right now. But there's going to be teams ahead of them that fall. So what I'm trying to say is in 2 weeks, don't be surprised if Alabama came from, out of nowhere, which is weird to say, back into the top 4 or 5.
Yeah, they're always going to want to try to sneak Alabama in there because you don't know how many years you have left of Nick Saban, and as much as we hate it, Alabama brings ratings. They're good teams. Like people want to see Alabama play, even though like it's kind of like the Patriots. Patriots were everybody's like, oh, we don't want, but they watch them in the Super Bowl. So I wouldn't be surprised if they somehow sneak in at the end of the year. But especially with Washington looking a little shaky at 5. You know what I mean? So
struggling with the 1-6 Arizona State at home. Of course they came off that emotional win against Oregon. But see, that's my point, man. All these teams are kind of struggling. They always seem to hit that, mid-season slump for all the pretenders. You see that every year. All the teams who get those early season big wins, do they handle that? I mean, I don't think it's a coincidence that Michigan, Georgia, Alabama, now Ohio State, the teams who have done this for a couple years now, decades now for a couple of these teams, they're the teams that aren't, Michigan's winning 49-0. Ohio State handled business against the number 6, 7 team. All these other teams, like USC, Washington, Texas, who, even though the brands are there, they haven't, they're not used to this level of success.
Yep.
And, the season gets really long in week 7, 8. You're like, man, the playoffs still aren't here yet. We got to be buttoned up and have another week of practice. We got to blow this team out again. It gets really hard late in the year. Going to Ohio State.
Right.
Last year, I didn't talk about them. I was too nervous. But everyone else in here, I believe, said that was the biggest game of the week, as it was, the 2 highest-ranked matchups. Ohio State took care of business. Like I said a couple minutes ago, the playoff poll comes out this next Tuesday. And as of right now, Ohio State is the only team in the country with 2 top 10 wins. And, their defense looks pretty legit. And, by the way, they won this without their wide receiver, too, Emeka Egbuka. They're starting running back, Trayvon Henderson, and best cornerback, Denzel Burke. So, assuming they take care of business against Wisconsin this week, which, by the way, is not a sleeper game. That was one of my potential upsets early in the year. It's at Wisconsin's in that game. Assuming they handle business, do you think Ohio State can go to 3-1 with this playoff poll based on their resume thus far? Could they jump Michigan and Georgia?
I think they should, but I don't think they will. I just think it's hard to if they haven't if Michigan and Georgia haven't shown you anything to where it's like, okay, like we can deserve to move them down, then they're not gonna do it. I think Ohio State will have their chance to move up to one, and I think they very well could be one by the end of the year. But for next week, probably not. I think they'll probably stay there unless Michigan and Georgia have some type of huge blunder, loss, close game, or something like that.
And they probably won't. But it will be interesting, that Penn State and Michigan game that's in 3 weeks from now, because I believe Michigan plays them 2 weeks before Ohio State. So that's kind of – and it's in Happy Valley. That'll be a tough game. Which, by the way, did you know that – so Ohio State beat Penn State. If Penn State were to beat Michigan and Michigan were to beat Ohio State, that Penn State would actually be the team that goes to the Big Ten championship. Because they would have all beat each other. Because how the Big Ten does it is it's based on opponents, like Big Ten, so conference winning percentage on the West bracket. So all of Penn State, Michigan, Ohio State are all in the Big Ten East. It would be based on the Big Ten West winning percentage, like who they play. And I don't have all three schedules right here.
Right.
But I know that Penn State's strength of schedule for the Big Ten West is tougher based on winning percentage than Ohio State, Michigan. So, yeah, believe it or not, all they have to do is beat Michigan and hope Michigan beats Ohio State, which very well could happen, and Michigan would be going to Indianapolis. So, okay, before we move on from college football, let's take a brief look at this week. Not too many top-tier matchups. I mean, Duke plays Louisville. That's number 22 versus 18. Louisville. Oregon, number 8 Oregon plays 13 Utah. That's obviously going to be the game of the week. The two highest-ranked matchups play. How do you feel that game's going to shake out after, they both have 2 dominant wins over the last 2 weeks? Does Utah impress you?
They do. No, yeah, they're definitely impressive. I think both of these teams are really impressive. Okay. For me, I would just have to go. I'm gonna go Oregon. I like Oregon more. I like their team a lot better. Utah's still obviously doing really good despite not having Cam Rising, so that's super impressive. But I just feel like, Oregon had a really close game with Washington, which they honestly should have won if it weren't for Penix, freestyling on the sideline, getting everybody hyped up, and leading them to a win. So I'm going to take Oregon. I feel like they're going to be the better team in that matchup.
I'm going to take Utah. So, one, that game is in Utah, and that's a tough place to play. I mean, just ask Caleb Williams.
True.
Utah or USC hasn't been able to beat him. And Utah, even with a backup quarterback, they haven't had Cam Rising all season, and he's probably done for the year. He's going to be back for, I don't know, a 5th or 6th year next year.
Yeah, I think they did say he was shut down for the year.
Yeah, and they're still doing it because Kyle Whittingham and his team, they know how to hold it together. I mean, a couple years ago in that Rose Bowl, they took Ohio State to the wire. They play good teams well. And at home in that environment, I'm going to take Utah in a close game, just like last week. My upset of the week, actually, believe it or not, I think Florida could beat Georgia this week.
Really?
In the annual, how they meet in Jacksonville, meet halfway game. Yeah. Don't ask, for any analytics or numbers of why.
Just a gut feeling.
Yeah, it's just a gut feeling, dude. I obviously with Brock Bowers being gone, and their new quarterback at Georgia, what's his name? Beck.
Some Beck.
Yeah. I think that's going to be a hostile environment. That's a rivalry game. I have the Gators upsetting Georgia this week, as well as Utah taking care of business against Oregon. So let's go to the NFL this week. Let's close it out with some pro football talk. I'm a happy fan. The Bengals come out of their bye week and play the 49ers, who are now on a 2-game losing streak. I know you're pretty happy about your Brock Purdy take.
Of course.
Is he no longer a top 10 quarterback, or was he ever?
He was never. He was always a bottom 10 quarterback, in my opinion.
Bottom 10?
Bottom 10.
Bro.
I don't think he's as talented or more talented than guys like Sam Howell or Desmond Ritter.
Really?
I think they would both excel in that offense. I think anybody would excel in that offense.
You act like he's a bus driver, man.
He should be. Like I said the other day, Monday night, I was like, he should be delivering my DoorDash.
Dude, and then what? You act like he's Tyson Bagent, the Chicago Bears quarterback who came in, by the way, and had that big win, that 30-12.
And he did it with a way less impressive roster.
Okay, so let's talk about the 49ers and the Bengals. My team being the Bengals, comes out of their bye week. They beat your Seahawks, who are a good team. I can't exactly remember who they play the week before then, but they go in the bye week 3-3, and now they have a tough schedule ahead of them. The 49ers, who lost their second straight game, they go back home. They're going to host the Bengals for a 3:25 kickoff Sunday. How do you envision that game going out? Do you think the Bengals can, get the 49ers to a 3-game win streak, or do you think now this pissed off Niners team's going to be like, okay, and handle business?
I think, unfortunately, it probably will be a pissed off 49ers team, right?
Yeah.
You had Christian McCaffrey had a fumble on Monday Night Football, which, doesn't happen. And then you had Brock Purdy play really bad. You had some questionable play calls from the defensive coordinator in San Francisco. So I just think they're like, okay, they came off their Super Bowl win against the Cowboys in Week 5. That's where all their emotions were. And I think it let it distract them against, PJ Walker-led Browns and then the 1-4 Minnesota Vikings. So I think they're like, okay, you know what? This is a good team. We know the Bengals are a good team. They beat the Seahawks are a good team. So let's dial back in. Let's take this seriously. And I think they actually will come out there, and I think they'll win.
I hate doing this. I've told you this before. I don't like betting on my team. I'm a pretty pessimistic thinker. I'm an optimistic guy, but I always try to down my team. So when we win, it's extra exciting. But I think the Bengals' backs are too far against the wall. And I'll tell you why, man, because that AFC North is no freaking joke.
Nope.
Looking at these standings, so the Bengals are the worst team in that division, which nobody predicted. I mean, went to the Super Bowl 2 years ago, went to the AFC Championship game, and obviously brought everybody back.
Yep.
They're the worst team at 3-3. And the Ravens are 5-2, the Steelers are 4-2, and the Browns are 4-2. If you lose this, we turn around and play the Bills next week on Sunday Night Football, and then we play. I forget the order, but Jacksonville's on there, the Chiefs are on there. We play the Ravens again. They're going to lose a couple of these games. So if they lose this Niners game, they'd have to rattle off a 4 or 5 game win streak just to be competitive in their own division. They're battling just to be not last. So I'm going to take the Bengals. I don't know how they're going to do it. Well, I know how. They're going to have to force feed Jamar. They're going to have to get T involved, who, by the way, outside of that Week 2 game against the Ravens when we lost, he really hasn't done much. He's been very disappointing for all fantasy owners across the nation. They're going to have to get their wide receivers involved, which is going to be tough against that San Fran defense, which you know very well.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, luckily for you, right? I mean, we haven't seen much from Nick Bosa. I mean, the reigning defensive player of the year. He only has 2.5 sacks on the year. They picked up Javon Hargrave, one of the best interior rushers. He hasn't done much. Their corners aren't strong enough. So their strength is really, Fred Warner and that linebacker group. They're just so physical, right? And they can cause problems, creating opportunities for the defensive line. They have a lot of talent there. Yeah. So I think you can. We saw it, Monday night. The no Justin Jefferson for the Vikings. You had Jordan Addison go for 100 plus. So, and you have the talent on the Bengals to do that. So it wouldn't shock me for the Bengals to win it, but I just think I don't see them losing 3 in a row, man. I just think that's too.
It's going to be tough. I just know that if we lose this game, I've been saying this all year. If the season's over for this game. But 3-4, and now the rest of our division plays games this week. Let's talk about your Seahawks. They play the Browns.
Mm-hmm.
I need them to lose. Yep. I need the Seahawks to win. Seahawks are at home. They're coming off the 20-10 win against the Cardinals after bounce back from that Bengals loss. Mm-hmm. How do you envision that game going Sunday? Do you think you can do me and my Bengals a favor and upset, or is it an upset? Beat the Browns?
We're actually 3.5 favorites, so It wouldn't be an upset. And I think we will get it done. The Browns have probably the best defense in the league right now, right? And Geno Smith has been struggling the past couple games. He had a bad game against the Bengals. He had an interception against the Cardinals. He wasn't looking too efficient. But I think we'll get it done. I think our defense is good enough to stop PJ Walker or half of Deshaun Watson, because Deshaun Watson's nursing an injury. Whoever goes out there, I think we'll be able to hold him. We got 2 top 5 corners, good defensive line depth. Linebacker group is really good. So I think we'll be able to muster enough points against a Browns defense and hold that defense. I wouldn't be surprised if we held the Browns to 0 points.
And I'm going to need your Seahawks to do my team a solid, because not only do you have to play the Browns this week, but you got to follow it up next week and play the Ravens, who right now are looking good.
Is that true?
Yeah. You play the Browns this week on Sunday, October 29th, and then November 5th, they play the Ravens in Baltimore.
Oh, Lord.
And they're looking pretty good, man. Yeah. I mean, you saw what they did to Detroit.
Mm-hmm.
So do you think you could go 2-0 these next 2 weeks and help the Bengals out?
I don't think so. I think we'll beat the Browns, but we just
The Baltimore
The
game. That's
Baltimore,
tough.
dude. Lamar has always given us problems, and we played a Lamar in 2019, his MVP year.
Yeah.
And oh my goodness, was that the most frustrating game to watch? I was watching, big LJ Collier out of TCU slip and slide trying to tackle Lamar, and it was pretty humiliating. And to see like Russell Wilson in that MVP race lose head to head, it was embarrassing. So we have a tough time with the Ravens. I think we'll lose that game, unfortunately.
Last game I want to touch on before we get out of here. We'll stay in the NFC West division. The Rams play the Cowboys as the Cowboys come out of their bye week. A lot of people seem to be taking a step back after, the Cowboys started the year great. They get crushed by the 49ers. They beat the Chargers heading into the bye week, and now they're playing the Rams at home. Do you think the Cowboys will handle business and take another step? Because now, the 49ers have lost a couple games in the NFC. The Eagles have a tough schedule coming up. So this is a big game for, possible standings at the end of the year. Do you think the Cowboys will handle business?
I think they will, but I think it'll be super close, like 3 points. The Rams always play the Cowboys tough. Like last year, I think when the Cowboys had Cooper Rush at quarterback at that game, I'm pretty sure that was their first game with Cooper Rush. And then in the playoffs a couple years back, when C.J. Anderson ran all over them. So the Rams have always given the Cowboys challenges, no matter what the team looks like. It's kind of just like a coaching battle there. But I do think the Cowboys will win. The Rams, everybody thought they were going to be the bottom 3 team in the league, and they're not. Thanks in large part to the emergence of Puka Nacua. They got a lot of young guys on the defense playing a lot better than they projected. So it'll be close, but the Cowboys have too much talent for them to lose this game, I think.
If it comes down to a coaching battle, I think Sean McVay
has
this one in the bag. No, I do think the Cowboys will handle business and lose the following week to the Eagles. So that's why I think they're going to be so hyper-focused on handling business against Los Angeles before they go up to Philadelphia and what'll be, who knows, maybe the best game thus far in the season next week. That's all we got today. We agree on the Spurs and UTSA handling business. We'll see what happens this weekend in both college football and the NFL. Hopefully your Seahawks take care of business, and hopefully my Bengals, man. Hopefully
we help each other out.
Yeah, we help each other out, man. Hopefully that's what happens. Thank you guys for listening. Please make sure to like and subscribe. We'll be back in here next week to talk about our picks and talk about more about UTSA and the Spurs. Thank you.